Hey ladies and gentlemen of the internet, Adrian here for Digital Dojos. Excuse the crazy contraption in front of me, but today we are unboxing and taking a first look at the iPhone 14 Pro. I'm super excited to dive into this and check out the new phone. And with that, it got in earlier today, just got back from the office. It's Friday, so I'm going to get to kind of dive in, switch over, and really test it out over the weekend. Of course, there's going to be a full review down the road after I've spent enough time with it, taking a look at it, comparing it to that of the iPhone 13 Pro and just in general. But with that, let's go ahead and dive right into the unboxing and kind of first impressions. Alrighty, so here we are taking a look at the iPhone 14 Pro, getting the box kind of open here. So I did my order as of this year and just more recent years. I've always done my order through my carrier, in this case AT&T. So here we have the literature at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and separate that because that includes a return address and whatnot for my previous iPhone 13 Pro. And then with that, here we have it. Simple, straightforward. And over the years, they've made a real big effort to kind of cut down on packaging and kind of e-waste, and it's better for the environment. As you can see, here's my iPhone 13 Pro box. So very similar in terms of reducing the packaging and the unnecessary stuff. A lot of that due to just them, one, cutting down the actual material involved, as well as things like the earphones and stuff that they used to include. So with that, let's go ahead and take this tab off, slide the phone out. And as you can see, this year I opted for the space gray or matte black feature. Let me go ahead and pull that off. Whoops. As everything kind of comes crumbling out here. The typical Apple literature designed by Apple in California, included with some manuals in there, as well as just the standalone solo Apple sticker. As you can see, I went with the kind of space gray or matte black color this year. Just kind of took it back to standard color. And with that, also the Lightning, in this case, the USB-C cable. So we're still not quite to just USB-C as the standard in Apple devices as of yet, but we are getting, Lightning to USB-C instead of Lightning to standard USB-A. And that's it. Again, Apple's really made a concerted effort to cut down in overall packaging on what's in the box. And outside of that, you really just have the phone here. At first glance, the one thing I will say at first glance here, the rings around the iPhone and the rings around the camera, again, this is the 14 Pro, massive, much more thicker in terms of size and just depth. It is pretty crazy to see how much thicker that actually just looks in person, not even just side-by-side comparison. I'm using my 13 Pro to film this unboxing, but trust me, these things look massive just at first glance. And that's the first noticeable difference. Outside of that, the actual phone itself feels the same. There's not a noticeable weight difference. I'm sure there is a micro difference there. And we'll go ahead and peel that off here. And here we have the phone in itself in all its glory with the new dynamic island / kind of pill or whatever you want to call it, notch-like situation we have going on. And I will say, I was debating between silver or this kind of matte black / space gray, and I am happy I went with this. It just looks very, very sleek, very kind of classic look. And as you can see there, the first fingerprints have already dawned on the iPhone 14. So with that, let's go ahead and power it on here. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the power button. I believe it should kind of come charge out the box here. So we have the iPhone turning on here, and there we have it in all its glory, the welcome screen. And with that, we can go ahead and swipe up and kind of get started with just the basic setup info. With this iPhone in question, they have moved completely to eSIM. So this time around, it's a different process to transfer things like your phone number and whatnot, because it's not as simple as being able to just plug your SIM card in. Now, notably, this is, a concern for some people who, for example, when I travel back to Japan or I go home to visit, it's nice having the capability just to drop in a SIM card when I'm abroad. Obviously, this makes it a little bit less convenient with an eSIM. And again, I'm sure this is kind of the future of things. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and connect to my Wi-Fi and get everything sorted out here to start. Okay, so at this point, it's asking for the phone number information and verifying all that. So I'm doing that off screen here. In my case with AT&T, it's asking me to verify my zip code, and it's going to go ahead and start activating the phone. At this point, it's obviously going to deactivate your other phone that you have active that has a SIM card in it, in this case my iPhone 13 Pro, and kind of go through the activation process. Now, in terms of setup, when it comes to iOS nowadays, you have the ability to easily just pair your current phone next to it and just say, do you want to set this up, and kind of have it mirror all that stuff over. Typically, through new phones, I've always liked to just kind of go with a clean slate in terms of just having everything start afresh and start anew. This time around, I actually might mirror it, and I think that's kind of more fair for like when I'm doing comparison's sake between iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro. Right now, it's already activating the eSIM, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on screen here so you can kind of see that process. Basically, it's connecting to the iPhone cellular network, and it's going to take it a couple minutes to go ahead and activate and assign the number to this phone. I'd imagine when these came out earlier today, because granted it's later in the afternoon now, the AT&T and other cellular networks were getting slammed by activations. So I'm curious if there's a lot of issues with everybody kind of porting their number over via eSIM. But right now it's doing its thing. We'll see how long it actually takes. But yeah, excited to kind of test this, put it through its paces. Like I said, I'm going to actually mirror my setup over just so everything is the same and kind of, all my apps are there. But I do also use this as an opportunity to kind of clean up my phone and ensure that the apps that I'm not using kind of get deleted and whatnot. All right, and with that, setup was complete. Pretty easy. Took less than 2 minutes to kind of port everything over. Looks like my new number's assigned. I can see I already have cellular service. And then we're kind of going into the nitty-gritty here of the setup, setting up things like Face ID and whatnot. Okay, so at this point, my iPhone 14 Pro is restoring from iCloud in this case, because that's a little bit quicker. So my 13 Pro is making a backup and doing its thing. Here we have them side by side. And again, I know this is not a full comparison, but again, here we have my 13 Pro in the Sierra Blue versus this new kind of space gray color. And again, even looking at the back here, just kind of comparing, all pun intended, apples to apples, those camera cutouts, those rings around the camera, definitely thicker and all of that. So again, obviously this isn't one where like dimensions wise we expected anything to be different. These are the same kind of dimensions, the kind of weight and shape. Really the only noticeable difference is that notch, which is now kind of that pill shape, which you can't truly or easily see here in this case with the black screen, but we'll take a little bit more in-depth look at that in a second here once all of this kind of wraps up. So here we have the new feature hardware meets software of what they're calling Dynamic Island. As you can see, the notch taking on that pill-like shape, where it's a little bit less intrusive, but still clearly there. However, now it's dynamic in that, let's say I'm playing music here and I swipe out, you can see that animation of how it collapses to the top there, expands, and then now I have this little mini bar here where I can see the music is playing. I can tap here to jump back into the music. If I had something else going on, for example, like a timer, I can start a timer here. I can swipe out and I can still see here at the active top what the timer is doing and the current status of it. So it's small little tweaks like that that are meant to kind of be a part of the hardware / software and just be more of a quality of life update. If really it's not drastic, but the nice thing is that with this, a lot of apps that supported the previous APIs for like CallKit and whatnot for iOS, a lot of apps are just going to support this out of the box. Developers don't necessarily need to update their app automatically for Dynamic Island, while I'm sure a lot of developers will to take more advantage of it. A lot of apps will work out the box, which is nice to see. And again, it's just nice to kind of have a unused, what would normally be unused space, kind of go utilize and go seamless with the hardware and software. It's going to allow you to see live updates, tracking when you have things like Uber, or if you're using like maps and you're navigating somewhere, that's going to be all displayed up there in that Dynamic Island. Again, it's just a nice little touch. It makes the kind of hardware and something that's notorious for being just, something in the way, feel more part of the phone. Obviously, one of the big notable changes here when we're talking iPhone 14 Pro in particular, it's all about the cameras, right? Like while it may look slightly thicker, it has the same arrangement. Obviously, there's a lot of internals and a lot of technical things going on behind this that, shines with the sensors and the lenses and the all new 48 megapixel capabilities when shooting in Apple Pro RAW. All of that fun stuff that's obviously going to be dived deeper into in the full review. And there's obviously much more capable YouTubers who will break down the nuances of when it comes to the lenses. But here's some quick smattering of photos and comparisons I took just off the cuff off of my 14 Pro today and my 13 Pro. Speaking of cameras, another thing I want to test is the front-facing camera. So I'm going to start a recording here on both my iPhone 13 Pro and my iPhone 14 Pro, and just kind of do a quick pan around here. This is not by any means a super technical test, nor even a fair test, but I do just kind of want to get initial impressions and thoughts here of just looking at both. The 14 Pro is definitely just kind of sharper out the gate. I don't know if that's just like the way that it's dealing with the lighting. Like I can clearly see in the background LED lights how this 14 Pro handles it a little bit better, whereas this one's a little bit more overexposed. Again, this is just an initial impressions and thoughts for all I know. My front lens can be dirty or, just the wrong angle, but this is definitely a better camera, technically speaking, than that of the 13 Pro. So finally seeing some updates there on the FaceTime camera side. But all in all, with the 14 Pro, outside of the minor hardware differences in terms of like the notch versus the pill, the slightly raised camera, you're not really going to be able to tell the difference between the 13 Pro out in the wild or the 14 Pro, other than if somebody gets the new fancier like flagship purple color for this launch. A lot of what's behind the scenes here is on software, and that's iOS 16, which if you're on a 13 or 13 Pro, you probably have that anyways, or you can upgrade to it. So, again, that's just something to keep in mind. A lot of the cool new features from the design and a lot of the features that come out with the newer phones are on the software side. And as hardware gets more and more advanced, I think a lot of the stuff we're going to see, even Dynamic Island, is hardware meets a software update, right? So this is a nice quality of life update with the Dynamic Island, taking a feature that's like a physical part of the phone and expanding upon it and making it a little bit more integrated. But it's, not anything that's going to be a night or day difference. Obviously, the hardware behind this is much better. Obviously, the stuff like the cameras are much better in this 14 Pro, and that's all the kind of the intangibles behind the scenes stuff that we're going to take a deeper dive in on the full review. But my initial experience out the box in terms of setup was pretty simple, pretty easy. The eSIM experience, very painless. And now I'm excited to kind of just daily test this, put it through its paces, and kind of test things like battery life, the newer cameras, and all that kind of other stuff behind the scenes to see how much of a difference it makes coming off of something like this, the 13 Pro. Again, be sure you're subscribed for a future full review of the iPhone 14 Pro to come and further comparisons. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for watching.